Discover real stories of hope, healing, and redemption. Join us on a journey to overcome the odds and bring hope to the world, one story at a time. Every story has the power to inspire, restore, and uplift others. From personal struggles to triumphs, these journeys show how hope can transform lives. These aren't just stories. They're testimonies of resilience and the power of a fresh start. Welcome to the Repurposed podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Repurposed podcast. We are meeting today on a beautiful Sabbath, and I have a very special guest, Scarlet Stearns.
Yes, excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you.
Thanks for having me.
You are a special guest because when I came up with the idea of this podcast, it was kind of derived from my small group that I had, and you actually came.
I did.
I think it was the first semester of my small group, maybe.
Yeah, when we were at the shop and doing The Chosen, and it was so fun.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate you coming. And I remember just like having, because we had a pretty decent sized group. So I got to talk to you some, but there were so many people. But I remember just a little bit that you shared with me the few times that we got to really sit down and have a conversation. I was just so impressed by your story. And then through the past, I guess, was it 3 or 4 years now, just watching you on socials and then getting to meet with you one-on-one, learning more and more about your story, just the little bit that I knew was the tip of the iceberg. So you were actually one of the first people when I started making a little list of who I wanted on here. You were on that list.
You're so sweet. Well, here we are.
I know,
all those years later. Bringing it to life.
So welcome.
I'm honored. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for today.
Well, okay. So I sent you out the questionnaire that I send everyone just to kind of help me get an idea, a little bit more of an idea of the direction that we're going to take the interview. And what I try to do is just read off a little bit of the resume of your items that you provided, just so our viewers can kind of get an idea of exactly who you are. Yeah. In a nutshell. Obviously, there's a lot more to you.
For everyone.
Okay. So you are the founder of Feel the Smile. Is it Feel the Smile org? I guess I'm used to seeing it on Instagram.
It's Feel the Smile is just the name of it. It is, our website's feelthesmile.org. Feel the Smile was taken on Instagram, so we had to come up with another name.
And I think sometimes when I see the links, I always just like rush them together, even though that's not the name. It's feelthesmile.org is your website.
Yes.
That they can go to. Feelthesmile.org. And then you're the development lead for Ascend, which is with Big Oak Ranch.
Correct.
That is so cool. Okay. Yes. So that's just who you are, a couple little titles, but we'll talk about some of your resume items. You're a speaker, a writer, and a nonprofit founder.
Correct.
You grew up at Big Oak Ranch, which I'm really excited to get into that.
Yes, me too. Excited to share.
Graduated at Samford with a degree in communications and ministry certificate from Highlands College. In college, you founded Feel the Smile as an online blog, but now it grew into a nonprofit girls ministry serving thousands of college and young adult girls online and in person.
Yeah.
Wow. And then again, you're a part of the Big Oak Ranch Ascend team as the development lead.
Correct. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
All right. And you don't have to give me your age. I know you're significant.
I'm 24.
Okay. You're 24.
Yeah.
And you've done all that. I think that's amazing.
Well, when you're single and 24, what else are you supposed to do, So here we are.
Well, now I know you're single. I'll put you on my list.
Please
we've
put
got
me on
Ryan.
the prayer list.
Yes. We've got Ryan on your
and all
list
my
of
friends are single.
men.
That's why I had to see if I needed to put Ryan on my list.
Yeah. So, okay, we've got 2 lists going.
That's right.
I've got a list that you're on, and you've got a list that he's on. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
We may do some matchmaking.
So when football season's over.
Yeah, you just...
We'll put you back in the game.
Yeah, you're obviously too busy, Ryan. Okay, and you seem busy, but you would be willing to make time for love.
Absolutely, will be willing to make time for love. Yes,
this is awesome. I might have someone. So, but anyways, let's get serious. Let's get back into it.
Let's do it.
Okay, so there are so many directions we can go to with this.
Go whichever way you want. I'm here for it.
I feel like I'm gonna do what I do a lot of times, where we just kind of go back. Start a little bit in childhood just to get an idea of, and I know that has probably a big part of
for sure
you ending up at Big Oak. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about that, and then we'll progress into Feel the Smile now, what you're doing with Big Oak, and then some things that we were just talking about that I was like, oh wait, let's wait, and we'll talk about it on the podcast. So
for sure,
I will say, and I want to read this because when I was kind of reviewing everything today, there was a particular story in the Bible that came to mind when I was thinking about you. And it is, I think, I didn't write down his name, but it's in Job. I think it's Elihu. I'm bad with names, but it's the young character that steps up and speaks. And it reminded me of you because you are young by the age, by age standard, but yet you've done so many things and you're doing so many things. And so it just reminded me of you. But it's Job 32, the specific verses are 6-9. And it said, I am young in years and you are old. He's speaking to Job, not daring to tell you what I know. I thought age should speak, advanced years should teach wisdom, but it is the spirit in a person, the breath of the Almighty that gives them understanding. It is not the old who are wise, not only the aged who understand what is right.
So good.
And I think that of you. I think that you have a wisdom and a discernment and a desire to do big things for the Lord.
Thank you. So, I appreciate that. I love that verse. I need to write that down before I leave.
Okay.
So I can read
I'll send it to you.
Thanks.
Well, okay, let's get started then. Let's kind of go back. Let's go back to childhood. Wherever you feel like your story kind of begins that you want to share. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up in Birmingham as a little girl. I lived with just my mom, my biological mom. My dad was never in the picture. And life was always as normal of a childhood as I knew it to be. I did dance and played soccer and went to school and had friends and all the things. And then when I was 8 years old, my mom sat me down and really, the best way that a mom could explain to me that she struggled with alcohol and she was going to have to go to rehab and she didn't know where I was going to be able to live or where I was going to be able to go. So right after that, when she went to the Foundry in Bessemer, actually, my mom went to rehab there and I moved in with my aunt and uncle in Trustful. And of course, like the hope and dream was that my mom would get better and we would be able to be reunified and I would be able to live with her. But the truth is she never got better. So when she finished her first experience at rehab, I moved back in with her for a few months. We lived in Inverness on Valleydale Road. And honestly, like I said, she just never got better. The drinking got worse. And I think too, I just kind of became more aware of what should be normal for a 9-year-old little girl. And so I ended up moving with my grandmother and just bounced around between a few family members for a season of my life. And after that, when my family kind of realized that they needed something long-term for me, they found Big Oak Ranch, which is a children's home based out of Gadsden, the boys' ranches in Gadsden, the girls' ranches in Springville. So I moved there when I was 10 years old. And in a season of life where I was so fearful to live with strangers and had no expectation of what the Lord would want to do in my life, he really did bring me to a place that would change my life for forever in the best way. I accepted the Lord during that season of my life. And even though I was so young, I knew and was able to recognize the chaos that was happening in my life. And I knew that if Jesus was who the Bible said that he was, then I knew that I wanted to pursue him and I wanted to love him and I wanted him to be a part of my story. And so I really always kind of explain, when I came to know Jesus, he was kind of like just a fairy tale. When you're a little kid, you believe in Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, and all of those things.
And he's just one of those.
He was just one of those.
Yeah.
I read about him in a book, just like you read about all the other stories. And I was like, well, if this guy could be real, then let me take a chance on believing in him. And he really, long story short, through all of these years, of course, has proven so faithful to every single word throughout all of Scripture of who he is. And every season of my life is another season of experiencing his goodness and faithfulness and just truly how true he is. And so ended up growing up at Big Oak through elementary school, middle school, high school. When I got to high school, went through a lot of transition just relationally with house parents, but then also lost my biological mom when I was 16 years old, just to the effects of alcohol. And I remember during that season of my life, I knew that God would be faithful because the Bible said that he was, and I believed the Bible and what the Bible said. But for the first time in my life, I didn't understand on paper how his goodness was going to make a way. And it honestly didn't necessarily test my faith because my faith didn't waver in who God was. I just didn't understand how he was going to be who he said that he was going to be. went through a season of my life of really just kind of questioning who God was going to be able to be in my life and in my story. Moved in with my mom and dad, who are now still my mom and dad. They're still house parents at the ranch, and they really did show me so much about God's love and how it pushes through every wall that we may be able to put up, or every uncertainty or doubt that we may have. He just proves true through all of those. And graduated high school, moved to Birmingham to go to college at Samford. And when I went to college at Samford, I started out going to Samford. I wanted to like own my own store. I always loved like dressing cute and was into fashion, all of those things. So I was like, I'll own my own store and like give back to missions or ministries or nonprofits or whatever that may be. Obviously, like the nonprofit world changed my life. Big Oak is a nonprofit. I knew that God had called me to ministry when I was probably about 15 or 16 years old. But I think after that hard season of my life, I just kind of ran from that. Yes, for sure. Just kind of like suppressed that because I was like, no way, like giving my life to Jesus hasn't made life any easier. So why would I want to like give my career to that? So anyways, went to college at Samford, went through my like college craziness season, kind of like how we all do, and really found myself at this place at the beginning of my sophomore year of college where the Lord, I mean, as verbally as God could speak to me without it being audible, just felt it so deeply in my spirit. God was like, I have so much more for you than what you're wasting your time on. And 3 days in a row, he just spoke that word so clearly to me. And I found myself in this season of life where I knew that I wanted to walk with God. I knew that I needed to. I just wasn't sure how to do that. And I found myself looking in all the wrong places. And I always say, when you don't know where to look for something, out of just being naive, you do find yourself looking in all the wrong places. So I had looked in all the wrong places for my value and worth and purpose, whether that's partying, boys drinking, all the things that we've probably all experienced before. And anyways, found myself in just a desperate season of Jesus, walking through the doors of a local college ministry. And I just knew that I needed to get in a room with Jesus. And that was the one room that I knew to go to. The Lord just quickly like grabbed a hold of my heart in that space. And the team at this college ministry truly just like brought me in as family. And the Lord just changed my life. He reminded me of my call to ministry, opened up doors for me to just walk in that. I had the opportunity to speak at this college ministry and really just kind of ignited a fire in my heart to share the gospel, but truly like God's heart through his word with other people, specifically college and young adult students. I always say, I think a lot of the reasons people don't pursue God or have a heart for God is because they're trying to pursue the wrong God. And it's the way that Jesus has been misrepresented to him or misrepresented to them through people. And Jesus has been misrepresented to me through a lot of people and a lot of brokenness because we're people and we're human. But what matters the most is what God's word says about who Jesus is. And that's who we have to choose to believe in, not who someone told you God was and then misrepresented who he was to you. So that's kind of really like the foundation of the Lord just igniting my heart for ministry and for teaching people how to walk with God. And from that, really just over my last few years of college was just kind of asking the Lord, like, what was this passion that he was stirring in my heart? Of course, kind of started to take like the small steps of faith that I knew to do, like lead Bible studies and spend time with girls at Big Oak. And then the summer before my senior year of college, through a series of events, like the Lord just called me to be bolder in my faith. I did not understand what he meant by that because I was like, what do you mean be bolder? Like
but what does that feel like when you're saying when you feel him leading or calling you to be bolder? Like what was the process that you went through that you felt that calling? What was that to you?
I would say it was just undeniable desire that I could not make sense of. It's like I just wanted to tell people about Jesus. I wanted to be around people that needed Jesus. I wanted to share my story and what God had done in my life with other people who would be encouraged by it, or maybe even other people who had gone through a similar experience and didn't understand how the Lord could be faithful to them. Like I just wanted to testify of who he had been to me, to them, and really found myself in a season of just trying to do that in any environment that I could. And some of those were organic, like at the grocery store or like the post office or at my job. And then others of them was like stepping out in faith and leading a Bible study or small group or whatever that may be. And then of course, eventually that led into starting Feel the Smile.
That is so cool. I wanted to go back to, you said that you accepted Jesus
Mhm.
when you were 15, 16, I think you said?
It was right before I came to the ranch, so I was 9.
Oh, 9.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I remember you said something about once you got into your teenage years, well, like 9, you're saying because of like Santa Claus, he was almost kind of this
Yeah.
mystical creature. But
Uh-huh.
what I think, and it was funny because right before you came over, I was on the phone with a friend of mine who has gone through a really tough season in life. And she was talking about how in this tough season, she really had to kind of take on her relationship with Jesus from more of a mature
Mhm.
mindset and actually ask of him to step up to her adult needs,
Yeah.
whereas you accept him at a young age. I did too, probably around that time too.
Mhm.
And he fits the age that you accept him at,
Yeah,
like as a
he
child, because it
does.
is kind of like
Yeah.
this, Santa Claus, maybe a little bit of a mystical, or what was the word that you used? You said
Like a
it
fairy
like a
tale.
fairy
Yeah.
tale because he's just so good and all
Yeah.
the stories that we're told as kids from the Bible. But as you age and as you go through hardship and you
Mhm.
experience things, you realize that he can really rise to the occasion to be
Yeah.
all that and more for whatever stage of life you're
Mhm.
at. He's not just the superficial, stories we get told in Sunday school,
Yeah,
that there's actually so much more depth
for sure.
and, he I guess, help and assistance and peace and healing that he
Yeah.
can provide.
He really is everything that we need
Yeah.
and provides everything that we need to be provided for or with in every season exactly how we need it. And I think this season of my life that I'm currently walking in, just experiencing so much fruit of God's faithfulness through the years. And I feel like the Lord's like brought me up to this like 30,000-foot view, and he's
Mm.
given me a glimpse of seeing like there has never been a moment that I've forgotten about you. And when
Mm.
you were like a little girl laying on your mom's couch, like crying out in tears of wondering where I was at, I was
Mm.
always so close to you. And
Yeah.
I always knew that I would use you in the way that I'm using you today. And that is just like the craziest realization is like who he needs us to be when we're 9, he is. Who he
Right.
needs us to be when we're 16, he is. Who
Right.
we need him to be at 24 and every season after this, like he always is and
Yeah.
always intended to be. Yeah.
Right. And what's neat is like that reminder, I was there with you in those moments where you
Mhm.
felt alone. And, I remember as a kid, there being moments where, I'm crying in my bedroom and you feel like you're alone. Like you
Yeah.
feel like, is this, and you're praying and you feel like you don't hear an immediate answer or an immediate comfort. But it's so neat how God fast forward. If you
Mhm.
have a heart that's truly desiring to do,
Yeah.
you know, to live a life that He can use, He takes those little moments and reminds you, I was there, but I'm going to
Yes.
use it.
Yeah.
Although it didn't feel very great at the time, like you had to go through that. And I was assisting you through it, whether you
Yes.
felt it or
Yeah.
not, but I'm going to use that for my glory later on down the road.
Yes, that is so true. And, I think like we all know that God's intentional in everything that he does. And when we're in the midst of hardship, we know that he's intentional in our mind. We're trying to convince ourselves of it in our heart, but we haven't
Mhm.
necessarily yet experienced it in that moment for whatever hardship we're walking through. Yet we're kind of just believing, hopeful, and full of faith for like how God's going to use it one
Mm.
day. And recently, like just looking back at if like my mom had not struggled with what she struggled with, like I never would have gotten to grow up at Big Oak. And if I had not grown up for Big Oak Ranch, like the way that God has used that season of my life to really set me up for success and what
Yeah.
I'm doing now with Feel a Smile is unmatched. Like growing up at the ranch, like the ranch is a 501c3
Mhm.
nonprofit. I never in a million years thought that I would get to lead my own, and it's like like God allowed me because of hardship to grow up in that world. That's
Wow.
given me a level of understanding at
Mm.
24 years old that people don't get for like 30 years removed
Yeah.
from now, and like also growing up at a nonprofit, like I grew up getting to travel to speaking engagements and like speak and share about my story and like what God's done in my life. And like now I'm getting to do that on like even larger platforms. No, I mean, not even that many years later, it's just so crazy, like what the enemy meant for evil it's not like God uses it for good or chooses to use it for good. It's like the Lord always knew that it would be without us even realizing it. And that is just like such a perspective to get to experience in this current season right now.
Yeah. Now, was it hard when you went from, you kind of moved around to a few family
Mhm.
members? I just kind of want to touch on that. When you did finally get positioned with Big Oak, how was that transition for you? Was that difficult to go from, being with maybe different family members, even though it was inconsistent
Mhm.
and, temporal, to going somewhere where you were more situated? And I mean, how did that look for you?
Yeah. That's a great question. So when my mom first told me that I wasn't going to be able to live with her anymore, I was always so fearful to live with people I didn't know.
Yeah.
And she didn't know, like I remember her saying, I don't know if you're going to be able to live with someone in our family. I don't know if you're going to have to live with strangers. Now, obviously, I know like strangers probably meant like foster care
Right.
in the system. And she didn't know where I was going to have to go. And I didn't know either. So that was always like a pretty heavy fear of mine. And
Yeah.
at the edge of every transition, I was like, oh my gosh, like, is this going to be the one where it's with people I didn't know?
Yeah.
So when my family sat down with me and started to explain Big Oak, it was immediately like, oh my gosh, like here it is, like the transition to
Right.
be with people that
The
I don't know.
strangers.
The
Yeah.
strangers
The
have arrived.
strangers.
Yes. And so
Yeah.
I always like explain that tangible feeling. It was like the feeling of my heart dropping, but from head to
Yeah.
toe. Like
Oh,
I was just full of fear. And actually at church this morning, we were talking about like when was the first time you experienced the Holy Spirit? And that was the first time I experienced the Holy Spirit because one moment I was full of so much fear. And the
mm,
next moment I was full of so much joy and peace and excitement for what was to come
wow.
because I knew that the Lord had only brought me into better and that this was just another level and experience of that. I didn't know what it was going to look like and I didn't know who it was going to be with, but I knew that God was going to be in it and that it was going to be okay. So I was so excited to have a mom and a dad because I'd never had
Mm,
both before.
right.
I was excited to live in a house and to have brothers and sisters because I hadn't had that before. So it's like the Lord just kind of shifted all of that fear and channeled it to like expectancy for what he was going to do and who he was going to be. My grandmother is just, I mean, a pillar of joy for our family. She's gone through a lot of trials and hardships on her own. And I truly think like that has been a spirit that like I've been able to inherit of just
Wow.
joy and expectancy through every season of trial. Transition didn't stop when I got to Big Oak. As great as it would be for house parents to be house parents for forever, we would be naive to say that that would be the case.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I experienced transition at Big Oak too. But every house parent that I lived with was the perfect fit for the season that I needed them. And it's just like praying and believing that like the Lord would show up for you
Right.
in the future the way that he always has in the past. And he's always faithful to do that too. So the transition was definitely not easy. I actually journaled like my first full year at Big Oak, which is kind of
Oh my
crazy to even
gosh.
look back on. And I found those journal entries recently, which I think plays into this like huge like revelation of just like gratitude and just like overwhelming just perspective of who God's always been to me and for me in my life. But yeah, it definitely wasn't easy. But I think too, when chaos is your normal,
Yeah.
transition isn't crazy,
Yeah.
and you just are used to navigating it and trusting the Lord through it. So,
And for you to have that kind of Holy Spirit epiphany at a young age to where it helped you redirect, and it might also be how God made you as well, just how you have a perspective like, oh, I'm gonna go into this environment with a mom
mhm,
and a dad,
mhm,
siblings, like your perspective kind of shifted to where
yeah,
instead of it being strangers, hey, now I'm gonna have like
a
a whole new
family,
family that I
literally,
get to have
yes.
like this cohesive unit.
Mhm,
And I think of Big Oak, we had a couple. We had one of my brother and I's mine and my brother's friends, Perkins, Haley Perkins. Her
oh yeah,
parents
yeah,
were a part of Big Oak
uh-huh.
for a while. I know that I think they were parents there
They
as
were house
well,
parents,
house
and
parents.
she was my 5th grade teacher.
Oh my
Is that not so
gosh,
funny? And now, I
small
mean, like, now we're
world.
friends, but yeah, she did teach me. Like, when I moved to the ranch, I joined her 5th grade class.
Wow.
I
So
know.
they have a school on campus there or on the
Yes.
grounds?
Yeah, so Big Oak has, like a few branches of ministry. One of those is Westbrook Christian School. Big Oak bought the school, I think in like the 80s, but all of Big Oak's kids go to Westbrook, but anyone could also go to Westbrook too. It'd almost be like if Briarwood had a children's home connected to it.
Okay,
so,
I see.
Yeah.
Well, and being a new mom, I just think of like if because I don't know if it's just me, but you always have these, and I think it's a part of your mom, like, I don't know, mindset activated where you're just always aware of anything and everything. But I have to be mindful to keep it in check because my brain can like wander off to these horrible, like scenarios. But as a mom, I think of Big Oak and I think about you going there and thinking that had to have been a relief. Like if I had to send my child somewhere because I could no longer, or something happened to me, or I could no longer, provide him an environment he needed to be in. Like what a comfort to know that there's a place like Big Oak. And now it's of course being operated by, we're all imperfect people. So it's not going to be an absolutely perfect, I'm sure,
Sure.
There's nothing in life that we're going to experience that's just perfect.
Yeah.
But to know that there's an organization like that you can trust in sending your children to and know they'll be taken care of and raised up right and guided and protected. I just think that's it. Like to me, just listening to that gives me a little sense of relief, to know that your little girl self was able to go to a place like that.
It is just so crazy. Like, I feel like the Lord has just blessed me despite how hard a lot of my childhood was. It was like I always say, I got to experience the two different extremes of life. I got to experience coming home from school and not knowing when my mom was going to come home, but I also got to experience coming home from school and having a mom and dad stand in the driveway literally every single day.
Wow.
And it's just so crazy. Like it just, the key verse for Big Oak is Isaiah 61:3 that says, "They shall be called oaks of righteousness." And that whole passage is just such a redemptive passage of how the Lord has called us and he redeems us and he chooses us and he is a God of double portion, and like, I just think now, like, what an honor. Like, I literally feel like I see the fruit of that verse being spoken over me all of those years because, yes, life was really hard in a lot of ways, but God, I just feel like has given me a double portion of just favor and opportunity and love and faithfulness that I just would have never had I not gone through a really hard season of life that led me to somewhere like Big Oak. So,
well, and now Big Oak is, in partnership with who you are and your drive and your desire to be obedient to whatever it is God's calling you to, they're strategically able to help you take what you went through and use it in whatever ministry that God's calling you to. They're not just sending you to school and then releasing you saying like, good luck. They're like, hey, how can, like, let's implement you in some leadership positions. Let's, even while you're attending and living there. So that's pretty neat.
It is pretty crazy. Yeah.
So, and I always say, I feel like your desire is to have a shop and then you felt God kind of leading you in a different direction, kind of mirrors, I think, where I was at, where I had my shop. And I had always felt like God had more for me, but I still did that shop. But while I had it, I felt like he was like, no more. Like, I'm pulling you out from that. But what's neat with your story is like you had that desire, but he got a hold of your heart before you starting the shop. So, and that tells me that is of God, that if it's something that wasn't what you originally planned, but he's given you the desire for it.
Yes.
And that's God. He's never going to force you to do something that you're just like gritting your teeth at doing.
No.
He's going to put that desire on your heart.
Yeah, for sure.
So, okay. So you went to Samford, you graduated, you started Feel the Smile while you were there though, but as a blog kind of.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me about kind of that process of what made you start Feel the Smile, where it came from. Just fill us in.
That's a great question. And it's actually like kind of a crazy story. So to kind of just backtrack, I've always loved going to church. I've always loved reading my Bible. When I was little, like I would write, honestly, like it was literally like the outline of a devotional when I would like spend time with Jesus at like 12 years old. I remember I would find a verse in my Bible. I'd write the verse. I would write my like reflection, and then I would like write a prayer. And that is how I would like read my Bible as a little kid, which is so crazy because, they always say like you can figure or you can trace what God's created you to do, like back to what you just simply loved as a kid. And like, that is just what I love.
This is so crazy because anyone who's been consistent, if there's anyone out there who's been consistent in listening to the podcast, I feel like almost every interview I've talked about that, like how, because and that's why I love going back to childhood to kind of, because some people recognize it already, and then some people have been on the show where they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize the connection there. But I truly believe that God will put kind of inspiration on your heart, what you were designed to do from a young age before the world gets its claws in you and tells you to be something else.
It is before the world trickles in and like crushes your like vision and childlike faith.
And creativity. And
it's just what you simply love to do. And so like for me, I just simply love to do that. And just when I was in middle school, like I can remember me and one of my friends, I was like, what do you think if we started to like mentor the 7th graders? Like in 8th grade, I wanted to mentor the 7th graders. I'm like, half those 7th graders are probably older than I was. But I was like, we have wisdom to share with them. So I just always loved like reading the word, sharing the word, and like mentoring and coming alongside like people that were in a season behind me. When I was in middle school, we also would go to these like Lifeway girls conferences. And I remember always thinking like, it would be so cool to work for like Lifeway one day or like a girls ministry or like whatever that may be. So I mean, obviously like I never realized like what like the little just dots that the Lord was just like placing to connect like all throughout my life. And so when I was in college, I was going through that season of like remembering like that the Lord called me to ministry and like just that flame just like growing in my heart. So I started doing a Bible study for the girls at the ranch. And I remember talking to one of my mentors, who her and her husband are the executive directors at Big Oak. And I was just like, I don't really know like what's going on, but I want to like go back to the ranch and pour into these girls. And that was like extremely foreign. When you graduated from high school or like left Big Oak, you were kind of like, peace out, like I'm never coming back here. So I was like, I think something's wrong with me that like I want to
come back.
I want to come back. So I would spend like every Sunday afternoon with like 5 girls at the ranch, the juniors and seniors, which is so crazy now because the girls that were juniors and seniors now or then are actually the girls that are in college at Ascend now that I like see every day. So the Lord was just like so intentional in that too. But so anyways, I was just praying through like, okay, Lord, like, what do you want me to do with my life? I was coming out of my like junior year of college. So you're getting to the point where having to like really start to think about what do you want to do for work? Like what kind of career do you want to choose? And I've always kind of been the type of person that like I've wanted to pursue something bigger than just me. Like I would be like, it's great to make great money, but like I want to do something that honors God, even if that means like I'm not making as much money. And like all throughout college, volunteered for a nonprofit that I had a relationship with, and like I said, served a lot at church. And it was so crazy. I was working at a store in downtown Homewood. And one day we were getting ready to close the store. And for anyone that has worked in retail, you obviously probably experience this too. When it's time to close the store and someone comes in, you're like, why would you come in here? Like, it says on the door that we close at 5. It's 4:57. Like, what would make you open up the door? So anyways, these girls came in, and it was so rude. I was kind of being like passive aggressive. I hope my old boss doesn't listen to this, but I remember I went behind these customers and like closed and locked the door. And they were like, oh, like, are you getting ready to close? I'm like, yeah, it's like we are, but feel free to look around. Well, they noticed that it was like a Christian shop. And so they were like, oh, is this like a Christian store? I'm like, great, of course. Like I'm being rude and they want to know about Jesus. And so I was like, yes, like actually it is. And they were like, well, this is so crazy. We're actually in town like on a mission trip. I was like, a mission trip? Like a mission trip to Birmingham. First of all, there's like a church on every corner. And I was like, and if you ask anyone if they know God, they're probably going to say yes, even if they really don't even have a relationship with him. So anyways, I thought that was kind of funny. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, what are y'all doing today? And they're like, actually, it's our last day. Like, our mission for today is just to go out and ask, like, if we could pray for people and pray for anyone that the Lord leads us to. And they were like, could we pray for you? And I was like, sure.
You're like, I should be praying for you.
Literally. So, they're like, this
God's
girl needs prayer.
Me to ministry.
Yeah, God's calling me to ministry. No, so I remember I was praying for 3 things. I can never remember the third thing, but I was praying for a husband, which I still am. And I was praying for more speaking opportunities because I'd had the opportunity to speak to people and communicate the word, and I was just like, I want to do this more. So anyways, these two girls started to pray for me, and they're like, God, like, we thank you for Scarlett. We thank you for her life. God, we thank you in advance for like her husband and just how you're going to like supernaturally bring them together. God, we praise you for like speaking opportunities that you're going to lead her to. And she said, and God, I just thank you, for the ministry that Scarlett's going to lead, for the ministry that's going to impact the thousands of women through her story and her testimony. And she was like, Scarlett, I feel right now that the Lord's calling you to be bolder, to be bold in your ministry and bold in your faith. And I was just like, literally, what is going on? She had no idea. I didn't even have a name for Feel the Smile. Like, she had no idea like what I wanted to do. And she's like literally praying like a prophetic word over this ministry that had didn't even have a blueprint over it.
But you just knew you wanted, like, you knew of the ministry, or you wanted to do something.
I
You
knew
just
I
didn't
wanted to
have
do
it.
something.
Okay.
I just didn't know what it was. And I for sure didn't verbalize it to this lady that
Right.
was praying over me.
Wow.
So I was just like, oh my gosh, like, what is going on? Anyways, they were so sweet. We prayed, took a selfie. They left the store. And I was just left like wrecked. Like, what? Like, God, what are you doing in my life? What do you want my next step to be? What is this supposed to look like?
Because they kind of affirmed what you were
They affirmed what was in
feeling.
my heart.
Mhm.
Yes, which was so crazy. And the only thing I knew to do was to start a blog. I'd kind of had this desire to like write a book. And someone in my life was like, if you want to write a book one day, like, you need to have a website. All authors have websites, and if people want to schedule them to speak, like, they go to a website. So I was like, okay, like, the only thing I knew to do was start a blog. And of course, like, a lot of authors have written blogs for years before they ever like get signed for a book deal.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, maybe this is just like my small step of obedience. And I was going to name the blog scarletstearns.com, which is kind of funny. And I remember I was like, I kind of have the ick like naming this my name, but like, what else am I supposed to name it? Crazy God story, just giving you all the details today.
Yes.
I was working with a friend, like helping me build my website. And when we went to buy the domain scarletstearns.com, for some reason, I literally can't even explain this outside of God. It wasn't going to work. Like, the domain with the web hosting, something like, we all know I'm technologically challenged,
Same.
but somehow it was not going to work.
It was not available or couldn't
Yes.
connect. Yeah.
Which is crazy because since then I've actually bought that domain, scarletstearns.com, which is so wild that it wasn't available or didn't work then. So anyways, my friend was like, is there any other name that like you have? And I was like, I mean, like, I had this random name, like Feel the Smile. And I was like, what about Feel the Smile? And you know, sharing a name is so vulnerable.
I know.
You're
Yeah.
like, is this embarrassing? Is it cool? Like,
Because in your heart you love it, but yet you're like,
But you're
is
like, are
other
they?
people like it,
Yes.
or do I just think it's
yeah,
great?
so I was like, what about Feel the Smile? And he was like, oh my gosh, that's so sick. I love it. Let's do it. And so it became Feel the Smile. And that name actually came from a guest speaker came to our church, and she said, every time I come here, I can just feel the smile of God all over this place because his favor and his purpose and joy is just so evident. And I remember writing that down in my notes and being like, I love that name because that's exactly how I want any girl that I get to impact through ministry to experience God's joy, experience God's favor, and to just be able to like walk in the purpose that he has for their life. And so that's really where the name Feel the Smile came from, and then how Feel the Smile came to be. When I started Feel the Smile, I was like, I would have never called myself a creative ever. So I remember praying like, God, you're going to have to give me the words for the blog, the vision for the blog.
Right.
I mean, everything down to like the colors and like the graphics. I had our first 25 blogs written within the first month that I started at Feel the Smile. It was literally just like the Lord just gave me all of these words.
Wow.
So I did just the blog for a year. And then in 2023, right after I graduated college, started the podcast. And then in fall of 2023, we started Feel the Smile Social. And really like the rest is kind of history. Once we started social, we started the avenue of like transitioning from like an LLC to like a nonprofit. And yeah.
So it's kind of developed into something that maybe you weren't necessarily thinking it was going to be
No.
at first.
Which is so funny because I remember when I started Feel the Smile, it's like I knew in my heart that that it would be long term,
Yeah.
but I didn't really know that it was going to be long term.
Mhm.
Feel the Smile was just my like second Instagram account, and like everyone has a second Instagram account.
Right.
You know, it was just
Right.
my like college passion project. But I mean, 9 months later when I was graduating college, I mean, I chose a job based on if I was still gonna be able to do Feel the Smile because I knew that I didn't
Yeah.
wanna stop. I remember when I graduated school, the hardest part about post-grad to me, it wasn't community, it wasn't finding a job or anything like that. It was the enemy making me second guess like what God had called me to,
Yeah.
making me second guess my purpose. And I just asked God so many times, like, Lord, if I'm supposed to keep doing this, like, please affirm me. Please remind me that this is what you've called me to. And so many times just through scripture and people, like time and time and again, he was like, this is what I've called you to.
Wow.
And I promise, like, I will provide for you through it. Like, if I've called you to it, I will be faithful through
Yeah.
it. And like, he has never gone back on that promise.
Isn't that so neat? I always try to encourage people because I think sometimes the concept of having a passion or having an idea can seem scary because you're
Mhm.
seeing the final or what you think the final product is. And
Yeah.
you're like, but here I am at step A, and this final product is step Z.
Yeah.
And it just seems so impossible or difficult or hard.
Mhm.
But it's like your story and what I try to encourage people because I started, hide and hunter in my bags and everything. And all it takes is just making a step, like just
Mhm.
starting something, buying a domain,
Yeah.
you know, even if what your idea of like what it's going to be changes, at
Mhm.
least get started on just make one small step and
For
you'll
sure.
realize through the course of life, through making connections, going through experiences, meeting new people, you'll slowly start like experiencing those steps B, C, D,
Mhm.
and the next thing you know, you'll look back and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm here." Or
Yes.
I'm like, maybe you're not at Z, but you're at X,
Yeah.
and Z now looks different, but it's
Yeah.
even better. But you've been able to cross like that
That's
distance
so
just
true.
by piece after piece. All it takes is just
Yes.
starting.
And I think, God is a God of steps. He is a God of faith. And, you know, it reminds me of in Psalms when it says, like, the word is a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. A
Mm,
lamp doesn't light a whole room, it lights your next step. And I think
yeah,
the Lord,
I love
like,
that.
he works like that, And I think if God would have shown me what I'm doing today when I started in 2022, I would have been like, "Oh my gosh, like, that's amazing," but I
Yeah,
also would have been like, "How on earth am I supposed to do that?"
yeah.
Like, I mean, now that we're a nonprofit, like, we do fundraising, and I remember at the beginning of last year, someone, like, threw out the idea of us doing a fundraiser, and I was like, "Over my dead body while I host a fundraiser." Like, I'm terrified of that, and, like, we've done 2, and it's great, and, like, we're
Wow.
doing more? So it's like, had the Lord shown me then what it would take, what we would do now, I would have been so overwhelmed, I don't think I would have started,
Wow.
which is why the Lord's so good to withhold things from us until it's the
Mm,
right time and until our hands and our hearts are at a place to hold it.
right.
And I'm just like a perfect example of that because God just gives us so much more than we could ask, think, or imagine. Surprise, just like the word tells us that he
Right.
would, but it's in his perfect timing and it's after the best next steps too that are small some days and large other days, but they add up to this beautiful story of God's
Yeah. And
faithfulness.
he just sustains us as we
Yes.
need it. Like I think
Yeah.
sometimes like you're saying, you think you kind of want it all right then. Like give me the
Mhm.
answers, tell me what I need to do, who I'm gonna be. But it says lean not on your own understanding. Like we've got to trust that God will give us what we need for that moment.
Yeah.
And then the next day he'll give us what we need for that moment. But each day we're moving forward.
It's so true.
We're given more and whatever he's giving us builds over
Yeah.
time and it gets us to who we need to be and where we need to be.
So true. So true.
So, okay, so you started growing Feel the Smile. It's no longer just a blog. So you
Yeah.
start doing socials you
Mhm.
mentioned. You
Yeah.
have your you talk on there, you do your little
Yeah.
your podcast. So tell me about what I'm interested in is I love how you've taken Feel the Smile out from behind the camera
Mhm.
into now being face to face with people through
Mhm.
I think that's what you mean
Yeah.
by the socials,
Socials.
right?
Yeah.
So you're now having women, like young women,
Mhm.
come and do little events,
Yeah.
themed events. I've noticed some of like the sweet
Yes.
decor
They're
and how
so
you set it
fun.
up and stuff. So tell me how did that happen? How did you take it from behind the camera, behind the screen to actually being in the real world face to face with
Yeah.
people?
So our first year of Feel the Smile, I had already done the blog for a few months, and I remember I was like, "How cool would it be if like we did an event for all the girls that read our stuff online, but to be able to come in person. I have so much that I could say about community and being in person. We were created for relationship. Like the Bible says that
Yeah.
like man is not good alone. Two is better than one. So many times in scripture do we see God affirm that, even in our whether it's friendships, like iron sharpens iron, or even if it's in confession, like having someone to confess with and grow spiritually with, like community and people are so important. We live in a world that is so oversaturated by screens and connection online, and that is not how God intended community to be.
No.
He meant for it to be in person. And I love Instagram and I love TikTok and I love podcasts and I love writing online and all of these things, but also like community was meant to be found in person too. So we hosted one event. We called it Feel the Smile Social because it was a social gathering. And it was so great and so cute. And then we didn't really do it again for, like another year. I was sitting in church one Sunday, and it was like July of 2023. And I guess I should have been paying attention, but the Lord brought more fruit to this anyways. He literally gave me like the whole outline for a social. Like,
oh, wow.
do one social a month for like a full semester, and just like build on the teaching that you're doing and just really create a space for girls to find true community with one another. And 2 months later, we hosted our first social. It was outside in a lady's backyard. We had food and worship, and I shared a message all about God's purpose for our life, and we had like almost 60 people come. It was crazy.
Wow. I remember you posting about
Yes,
that.
it was
and I
so
was like,
crazy.
this is so cool.
Yes, and I always like to say the Lord has taught me so much through leading Feel the Smile, especially since we started social. Leading something and starting something from the ground up, it is so fun, but it is really hard. It takes letting go of fear of man. It takes letting go of numbers. It takes just simply being obedient and like hope that something's going to work. And we're in a season right now where the Lord's just been so faithful to bring us the most like amazing girls to get to love on and partner with and guide and walk through this season of like college and young adulthood. And it's just my greatest honor. But I guess to go back to answering your question, like how did all of that come to be? Really, it was just a burden to be able to be really like a big sister to the girl that needs it, that maybe doesn't have it spiritually. Our like mission statement for Feel the Smile is bridging the gap for girls that want to know God to equipping them to walk with him. And I think one of the biggest ways of that is equipping them with community to walk with God. So many of the girls that come to Feel the Smile, they know God and want to pursue God, but they just don't have anyone to do that with, whether it's their first time in their life where they're taking their faith seriously and they don't really have community to do that with yet, or they've just never had godly friends and they're able to find that at Feel the Smile, which is just so cool.
That is neat. And you think about all the stories in the Bible, or like even where he dispatched his, when Jesus set up his kind of immediate 12 that he started pouring into while he was on the earth, he sent them out in twos. Because he knew that we really need that person there that we can be like shoulder to shoulder with, that can kind of help us, encourage us, and we can do the same for them.
For sure.
So that is important. And like you said earlier, I mean, we're in the South, we're in the Bible Belt where everyone talks about, oh yeah, I know God, or I'm a Christian, and that's easy to say, especially if you've grown up in that environment, but saying it versus living it is totally different.
And that is one of my biggest hearts behind teaching people, not just about God, but how to do life with him. I think the enemy wants us to overcomplicate walking with God because it'll keep us from doing it. The enemy wants faith to seem unapproachable. He wants us to feel like honoring God and helping God delight in us is just unachievable. Like
we're not good enough.
Yes, he just wants to make us feel like we can't do that. I always say, the verse in the Bible that says like when we get to heaven, like there will be a group of people that knock on the door of God's home and God looks at them and he says, "Depart from me, for I never knew them." Like I joke and I'm like, I think half of them will be from the South because faith is just so normal to us. We it's few people actively invite God into into their everyday, like the Lord wants to be he wants to be a part of every single aspect of your life, the good parts, the bad parts, the pretty parts, the ugly parts. And I think like yeah, we show up to church on Sunday, but like, do you invite God into your Monday through Saturday?
Right.
Or like, we believe that God exists, like, so does Satan, you know, but
Right.
like, he's not going to spend his eternity in heaven. Like,
Right.
there is a level of inviting God into your life and doing life with him and having a true relationship with him that I think it can be so easy to miss out on,
Yeah.
which is why it is like my burden to help people know how to do life with God in every single aspect of their life, because that's
Yeah.
what God wants too. He doesn't want perfection. He just wants our hearts and to be with us. And that's such a freeing thing
Yeah.
to realize and experience. I've been reading a lot in the Passion Translation in my Bible, and Matthew 11:28, it talks about how like God, it literally says that God is our oasis. And when I think about an oasis, like, it makes me think of a paradise where there's no striving, there is no longing. It is just being and delighting.
Yeah.
It says, like, when you take my yoke upon you, you will realize how easy I am to please.
Wow.
We make pleasing God feel like the hardest thing in the
Yeah.
world. And what truly pleases God is just who we are. It's not how many times a day we read our Bible. It's not how many good things we do for God. It is simply realizing that we are his child, and that just being his daughter, being his son, and that's what delights the Lord.
Yeah. And you said something that I loved, because it's so true. It's so easy to miss out on this relationship with
It
God
is.
because of what all the factors that we can put into it to keep us from embarking on that relationship. But just as easy it is to miss out on, it's so easy to implement.
Yeah.
Like, just having that
It's
daily
so
relationship.
simple.
It's like, I've always said, and did I have a sweet childhood? Yes. Was it perfect? No. Like, I went through hardship. I experienced things. Is it comparable to other people's stories or even your stories? Probably not. But I will say, in the course of my whole life, and I'm 35, I've never felt alone.
Yeah.
And I think that's because of how I implemented my relationship with God, because it doesn't matter where I'm at. It doesn't matter. It's not because I'm, sitting at my Bible all day.
Yeah.
Yeah, do I try to implement a quiet time each day? Yes, because that helps me more than it helps probably anyone, because
sure.
I am such a sinful person. I need to start my day off right. But my relationship with God is just a continuous daily thing.
It
I'm like
is.
talking to him like he's next to me.
Yeah, I'm like, if I had cameras in my house, people would think I was crazy.
Yeah. And it's like, I walk outside with the dogs and I'm like looking up in the trees. I'm like, oh God, like, look at those little leaves. They're
Yes.
changing color. And I just
Yeah.
have this innocent conversation. And what I think of, I'm like, how many relationships in our lives do we feel like is easy and innocent these days? Like, that's what I miss. An innocent,
Yeah.
easy. Think about your childhood friends
Yeah.
and just how easy it was to hang out and play. Like,
Yeah.
that's how easy and innocent and pure a relationship with God can be.
Yes, it is.
Just implementing that daily, just talking to him. And it's easy to, I feel like I'm in a very busy time in my life, just having a baby. So I feel very distracted, but there's never a time where I can't just sit down and just have a conversation with him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
He is just available, accessible all hours of the day. I was talking with someone about that the other day, about how God doesn't sleep.
yeah,
How he's always interceding, working in our midst, even when we're sleeping. Like, there's
Yeah.
never a moment that the Lord is not like right beside us, which is just so crazy to actually like set your mind on and realize too.
it's incredible.
It is. He's the best.
Well, so tell me, when you do these socials, when you do your blog posts, when you do, your videos and stuff, how do you come up with that curriculum?
Yeah.
Whether you're speaking to people, whether you're, talking over Instagram or TikTok, like,
Yeah.
or writing devotional maybe eventually, like,
Yes.
where do you get that inspiration? How do you guide those conversations?
In terms of like content that we share at like a social or anything like that, most of the time, obviously, it's just like sitting and hearing what the Lord's leading me to share and speak on. Some months I have a message that I'm like, is this gonna land? And then other months I have a message that I'm like, oh, like, I know
This is
that
good. Yeah.
this will be good. I feel like oftentimes it comes from just the overflow of what I'm learning in my personal life.
Yeah.
People have like a lot of different opinions on that. Some people think that you need to have separate what you're learning in your quiet time from what you're teaching. I find it more fun to teach on what the Lord's like revealing to me, because
Yeah.
I think it's where a lot of my just like passion and desire comes from. But then also for social media and the things that we're like teaching online, a lot of that is just like, okay, a lot of girls that follow us are wanting to learn about purpose. A lot of the girls that follow us like don't like their job. So how can we teach them to like how to make the most of the season that you're in? And
Right.
different things like that. So logistically, from what we're teaching online, it comes from like feedback of what people are walking through.
Okay.
Messages that we're teaching at social is most of the time whatever I feel like the Lord speaks to me. The way that I can kind of like identify what the Lord's speaking to me is anything that just like keeps coming up in my
Yeah.
life. Last month we talked about the cost of discipleship. We've been studying Ephesians in Bible study. Obviously, Ephesians is all about like what it looks like to walk with God.
Mm.
And that looks like letting go of a lot of our sinful nature and desires and things that we want. So that's kind of where the heart behind like teaching on the cost of the cost of following Jesus, and just what it cost us to say yes to God. So I think navigating what we're teaching on or writing on or whatever that may be, it's kind of different every time, but a lot of times it's just kind of organically whatever the Lord like brings to the top of my mind. And of course too, when the Lord's really actively speaking something to you, it makes writing it or speaking it a whole lot easier than if
Yeah.
you're trying to like pull teeth. But also too, thank goodness, but I do feel like I'm constantly like in the word or
Yeah.
like asking God, okay, like preparing stuff from the word too, which is super fun for me and I love it. But
And you stay in that mindset, in that headspace.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Do you have a group of girls that work with you?
yes. So we have one girl, Caroline, that works very part-time for us.
Mhm.
And then we have a team of girls in Birmingham that help with socials, whether it's like getting food, setting up the room, whatever it may
Yeah.
be. And then we also have social in Auburn and Tuscaloosa. So we have a team of girls there too.
Okay, that's kind of new then.
Yeah,
Is that new?
it
Like
is.
having those kind of satellite?
Yes. So Auburn, we started in January, and Tuscaloosa, we started in September.
So how does that look? I mean, do you make trips down there? Is it just a group of girls that are
Yeah.
like
So at first I would make trips. Like in the spring when it was just Birmingham and Auburn, I would like
Mhm.
alternate. Now that we have 3 locations, I really can't be 3 places at once. So what that kind of looks like is every month we have like a social lead team call. And really it's like feedback on how socials are going in their locations, anything I can do or our team can do to
Mm.
help equip them or support them. And then I actually teach the message to our team and then equip
Wow.
them with like a guide so that they can teach their girls.
So do they meet so the people who wanna get involved, say
Yeah.
if someone's listening to this and they're like, "Oh, I'm in Auburn or I'm in
Yeah.
Tuscaloosa, like, how can I get involved?" What does it look like to be a part of the Feel the Smile org? Not necessarily as someone working it or
Yeah.
leading it in those locations, but just being a part of it.
Just going.
Yeah.
So, in Birmingham, Auburn, and Tuscaloosa, we have Feel the Smile Social the first Monday of every month.
Okay.
We have text thread, email thread, Instagram, all of those avenues of how girls can kind of stay in the know.
Mhm.
Typically, if a girl like DMs us on Instagram, we'll connect them with the social leaders in the town that they're in. So
Okay.
like I'll be like, if you want to shoot me your number, like I'll connect you with your leaders, and then I'll send their number to like the girls that lead in those towns. And then Birmingham and Tuscaloosa, we do Bible study every Monday on or almost said every Monday on Monday night. Every Monday night we do Bible study.
Okay.
So social's the first Monday of the month, and then the rest of the Mondays is Bible study. And then we also are starting, we've had a lot of girls interested that aren't from Alabama. So we're actually starting to like stream social and all of those
cool.
things online. And then we're starting to post like all of our message content on YouTube too.
Oh, wow. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Yes.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
And that just helps expand, what you're trying to do. And there's so many people that are desiring a community
Yeah.
like that.
There are.
I mean, do you feel like you are overwhelmed every now or do you ever get
Oh my
overwhelmed
gosh.
with like the growth or
Not necessarily with the growth. I think I always say, you're in the right lane of life when it gets really hard, but you still love it.
Yeah.
There's obviously a lot of vision, and I'm only one person.
Right.
So I can get a little overwhelmed, like because I think I could work on Build a Smile 24 hours of the day
Mhm.
and I would be so content doing that. Like, I just love everything that we get to do. But
Yeah.
obviously, there's only a certain amount of hours in a day to do things. So I feel like when I sit down to work on Build a Smile, it's like as I'm working, I think of more stuff that I want to do. And that can sometimes get overwhelming, especially when you realize how many girls it's impacting and you want to be
Yeah.
able to equip and love and support
And
all of
steward
them.
it well. Yeah.
Yes, but being able to do that takes time, and resources,
Yeah.
and obviously time and resources are limited. So then it's also comes down to like being a good steward of like the time and resources that you have to be able to
Right.
impact as many people as you can. So that's pretty crazy and like can feel overwhelming too. But I'm so grateful for all the people that believe and feel the smile and like want to be a part and are so helpful and really
Yeah.
do make it all possible.
When you talked about in the beginning that you got the ick from trying to buy out or like do
Yes, my name.
scarletstearns.com, but here
Yes.
you are now as time has gone on.
Yeah.
God, that ick you felt was because God had the intention of it not just being uh carried by just you. Now you've
Yeah.
got an incredible team, a
Yes.
community, people that are believe in what God has put on your heart and they want to help
Yes.
carry it out. And
Yeah.
what would you tell somebody, like what's your biggest piece of advice for someone who is wanting to start something, like some kind of nonprofit or just something they're passionate about?
Yeah, I love that you asked that because one of my like one of the things that I love to do the most is helping people that are in a season that like I've just walked through or at least have experience
Mhm.
in. And I'm 24, so I'm still pretty young. I mean, to help anyone in like the organizational world,
Mhm.
I feel like. But one day, like I would love to be able to like truly have like an organized, I don't know, like not necessarily business, but just a way to help people that are starting their own things or just like have a burden to start. And I think my biggest piece of advice and wisdom is to lean into what you truly sense the Lord like leading you
Mm.
to. God puts passion on our heart for a reason, and He puts desire on our heart for a reason. And it's not to go to waste, it's because He wants to use it.
Mhm.
Now, in that transition, you're going to have to put a lot of faith into the Lord. You're going to have to let go of a lot of fear of man. Like when people
Yeah.
kind of ask, like, what's your biggest hurdle or what's anyone's hurdle? I think it's obviously like wondering what other people are going to think.
Mm.
Um, the Lord leads us to do crazy things for
Yeah.
faith and for the kingdom. Jesus did, the disciples did, and all like radical followers of Jesus do. And
Yeah.
sometimes it like looks weird and like that has to be okay. I always say like I would humiliate myself for Jesus 100 times over. Like it's the greatest cause that we could
Yeah.
lose our ego for.
Yeah.
And it's so impactful every time that we do it because it strips us of our flesh and it lets
Right.
who Jesus is shine through. So that's what I would say. Just like lean into whatever it is that like you feel like the Lord's leading you to start. And you don't have to feel like whatever God's leading you to has to be this big thing.
Right.
Like if the Lord puts a passion for like high school girls on your heart, then like start to lead a Bible study for high school girls. And if it's
Yeah.
3 girls, then like that's incredible. And if it's 35 of them, then like
That's incredible.
that's
Yeah.
just as incredible.
Right.
Like numbers, success isn't based on numbers, it's based on obedience. And like
Yeah.
we just have to be obedient to what God's called us to. And however that looks like, and it's gonna look different for every single one of us, which
Mm.
is where God's unique design for humanity comes into play. And that's such a beautiful
Yeah.
thing.
Because even like you said, a lot of times we kind of measure success by numbers,
We do.
but God has a way of bringing around the people who need it.
Yes.
And sometimes when it's a smaller group, we're at that stage of our life, we're better able to steward it well. Cause I think that's the big thing is stewarding
Mhm.
it well. You talked earlier about, learning about Jesus from, kind of other sinful people. So maybe we don't have
Yeah.
the best example of who Jesus is. But when it's a small group like that, to us, we might think, oh, it's small, it's not successful. But maybe that's the size group and the
Mhm.
people in that group that really need
Yeah.
the attention and it's so important to steward that right, and it's easier to do in a smaller batch,
It
at least
is.
starting out even.
It really is. And I always say, like, I'm so grateful. Like, we have gone, like, on the subject of numbers, like, we've gone through a lot of, like, I don't want to say highs and lows because they weren't better or worse because numbers were larger or smaller than others, but like just a lot of different seasons of numbers and what that looks like. And like starting events in new cities, like obviously comes with smaller numbers. And our Auburn team, like growing something in a new city is like a really hard thing to do. And our girls in Auburn have just been so faithful of that. And but now, like in Birmingham, like we've been in Birmingham long enough to where like our last 3 socials, like we've had 50 girls come, which is crazy. And there's things you can do with 15 that you can't do with 50.
Right.
And there's things that you can do with 25 that you can't do with 75.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the beauty of those seasons is like, do what you can today with what God has given you. On both ends of the spectrum, like God says the one who is faithful with little can be entrusted with much.
Yeah.
And we would be overwhelmed with much if we started out with that. I mean, that's why you see so many like influencers that just like blow up overnight, and like either it's not sustainable or I mean the relationship that they have with followers like isn't organic or in depth. It takes with like being faithful with the little over time that grows like the most beautiful dependent platforms of the Lord. And I think also too, like you just cherish things differently when you watch God grow in such miraculous ways.
Yeah, it creates a dependence on him to grow it.
Yeah.
Especially if it starts out small. I think, kind of talking about how God will sustain you with what you need at the time. I feel like sometimes if we were just given this big bang of a huge successful, thousands of people coming in attendance, like we'd almost maybe to a degree credit ourselves with it.
Yeah.
But if God just has us on a steady growth where we have to hustle a little bit, show that our passion is, our passion and obedience is there, then he can really bless it and grow it.
Yes, he really can. And you just like, it reminds me of just like the prayer of Jabez, where you just like pray for like more blessing and expanded territory. And like, if that's your desire, like God will bring that in the best time. And there have been so many moments that I've been like, Lord, thank you for letting me like fail or mess up or like work out my like leadership muscles on small platforms before I get to big ones, because like the Lord's just so intentional. If we were meant to have large numbers today, like we would. And if we were meant to have small numbers today, then we would, like God's just so faithful in that area of life and ministry too.
Yeah. Now, speaking of God's faithfulness, you talked about starting to do fundraisers.
Yes.
And you're talking about supporters and, funding and being faithful in those areas. What are y'all's goals right now that you're doing the fundraising for? And like, how do you even go about setting those up?
Yeah.
What are y'all working towards wanting to, achieve for Feel the Smile?
That's a great question. So last year was our first year doing fundraising. I was terrified to do that. But I also, I love the nonprofit world. God's given me experience in it and a heart for it.
Yeah.
So it was pretty evident that like that was kind of the lane that we would go down. We started off as an LLC because we were selling merch. And I was like, I do not want the IRS to come after me. So can we please get this set up in the right way? Which is not that we were like making enough money where the IRS even cared about us.
Still, you wanted to do it right.
I was like, okay, like let's do it. Let's do this right. And it's so cool too, because it's like, I think the Lord knew to put that desire on my heart because Feel the Smile would be long-term, and we wanted to start out with like a heart of excellence and doing it right. But then when essentially the money that we were making was just being turned around and being invested into the girls that we were serving through social, our lawyer was kind of like, let's like flip this around and make this a nonprofit. I'd kind of asked them if people ever wanted to support us, could they support us? And he was like, I just think you should be like 501c3. So anyways, we like made that whole transition.
Was that difficult? Because I hear like...
No.
Okay, it wasn't.
A lot of people
that it is hard. That's what I've heard.
It wasn't hard for me.
Okay.
I don't know
Maybe
what...
it was the team you had. And
Maybe
just the anointing God put on your life.
Honestly, maybe it was like the team, the anointing, and just how willing people are to help.
Yeah.
Like we had someone that he did some stuff for Big Oak and obviously had that connection. And someone on our team was like, would you help one of our girls? That's like
awesome.
And, I mean, I literally was like, this is what I want to name it. This is what we would do. He asked me a few questions and like sent me the paper. So it was kind of crazy. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. So from there, it kind of got to like the point where we're like, okay, like I guess is this where I'm going to have to start asking for money? Because like I hate asking.
I do too.
I hate asking people for help, much less like money.
Financial help.
Yes. One thing that I've learned is like, just how your heart and gifting is serving and loving people, someone's heart and gifting is giving. And
Yeah.
that's what they delight in doing. That is their spiritual gift. And that's what they do that honors God. And it is
Yeah.
their honor to give to people. That's kind of a reality that I've had to allow, like, let shift my heart. God is a God that knows that we need help and
Yeah.
delights in us needing help, which is why he sent the Holy Spirit as a helper.
Right.
And financial provision is just an extension of needing help, especially for organizations that need it. Our first last year fundraising, we met our goal in June. So we're like
Wow.
halfway through the year and had met it. And really then we were just fundraising for our socials.
Yeah.
We're able to operate social on a pretty low cost because we don't necessarily have to pay for venues to do social in, which is really great. But also
Are those venues because they're provided by just people who want to support you, want to use or allow you to use their home or business to set up in? Is that okay?
Exactly.
What a
Exactly
blessing.
that. Yes, which is such a blessing. So from then it was kind of looking at, okay, what do we want? Like, what do we want Feel the Smile to look like? We just got through actually a few weeks ago, like finishing like a 5-year kind of like business plan essentially of like, what do we want Feel the Smile to look like? Where do we want that to go? And with that points to what are the resources that we need to get there. Obviously we know that vision without action is just a dream. But also vision put into action requires resources.
Yeah.
And that's just part of like the glory of being a nonprofit and an organization that does what we do. So a lot of those resources are obviously financial. We provide food for social. We provide food for Bible study. We create online resources, which requires equipment, which you know that. It also requires time to sit down and do it and be a good steward of it. So right now, our next like big like funding initiative that we're going towards is to fund for me to be able to do Feel the Smile full time. So right now, Feel the Smile is technically like, it's not even a side hustle because I don't make any money off of it. It's my side passion.
It's your passion project.
But yes, but like for Feel the Smile to become all that we want it to be, it requires like me stepping into it full time,
right,
which
and
we're
being
just
able to fully focus on it.
So we're not necessarily at a place to do that now. I'm believing full of faith that I think that it'll be sooner than later that I'll be able to get to do that. But that's kind of what we're like pushing towards right now as like our immediate need. It's just financial funding for that. So
now, do you feel like when you've done these fundraisers that it was easier than you thought it was going to be once you stepped into that role?
You know, I kind of joke and I always say there's things that you do even when you don't want to do them because of the cause that you're doing them for.
Yeah.
And when I look at the girls that come to Bible study and that come to social and that are hungry for Jesus, I cannot imagine seeing a need and walking away from it like it's not my burden anymore.
Right.
And with that comes doing things that you're fearful of, that are scary and that call for bravery, like standing in front of 50 people and saying like, these are our needs and what we need funding for. So there's parts of it that I love and parts of it that I don't. More that I love and less that I don't. The parts of it that I don't love is just like, oh my gosh, like this is so scary and like having to stand up in front of people and presenting yourself. But then even like we were just preparing for like a big grant and I said I felt like I was working on like a senior thesis that I never wanted to end. Like it was so fun and I loved it so much. And I mean the parts that like aren't fun are like the nerves and like anticipation of like making the ask. But all of that, it's so funny. Like I said, like, you know, you're in the right lane when it gets really hard, but you love it.
Yeah.
It all ends up being so fun. In the end of the fundraising events are always like, oh my gosh, like I'm so glad that we did that. And we got to meet a bunch of amazing people and the Lord made a way. And like, I mean, we had a fundraiser in October and like he exceeded our goal and our expectation. So we're like fully funded for 2026 in terms of what we need like for socials and to keep socials afloat. And then like projecting what those needs would be obviously come with like knowing when we're going to start a new social. We know how much it costs to like launch a social and like sustain one and different things like that. So
there's just so much. I have so many thoughts as you're speaking and I'm like trying not to let them get jumbled in my head. But it's neat to hear about you saying like it'd be, you know, terrible to see a need and just walk away from it. Like you've lived that. Like you've lived where you had a need and Big Oak like stepped in, which is a nonprofit, right? You know, stepped in and provided you assistance. And,
Yeah.
so you actually lived what it looks like to be blessed,
For
to
sure.
be helped and to be given an opportunity to have a platform and have people pouring into you. And it's like, and now you get to reciprocate that.
Yeah.
And then, I think about your time out, there are people who are given gifts and some are to go and some are to send.
Yeah.
And, in the Bible, and there was something that was put on my heart the other day that I kind of wrote down. I was like, maybe I'll talk about this at some point, but it's so neat to see how even in the Bible, Jesus relied on the women
Mhm.
to support financially,
Yeah.
the ministry that he was building. Not that that was their only responsibility, but it was neat to see how God had equipped them with the
Mhm.
ability to help fund and
Yeah.
help send, him and the disciples. Like I think, it talks about like Mary Magdalene and then Lydia, who I think she was in garments or dyes or something
Mhm.
like that. But he took each person and what their strengths were and gave them the opportunity to serve in the way that
Yeah.
they needed and they wanted and they were
Yeah.
fulfilled in. Like, some people were ready to go out and to speak to people one-on-one, to travel on foot, to go do this. But then some were like, hey, I'm not in that position, but let me bless you, bless the ministry in this way, which is
Yeah.
what you're talking about.
For
I always
sure.
felt like I had the desire to go, and that's
Mhm.
still my desire. But I
Yeah.
realize, especially now in the season I'm in, I'm more in a season of sending.
Yeah.
And I think that we can kind of go back and forth into what our roles are for the kingdom
For
and for
sure.
ministry.
Yeah. I mean, I just feel like, the Lord's obviously so understanding of seasons
Yeah.
and what that looks like. And people always, they're always like, oh my gosh, you're so busy. And I'm like, I am so busy, but this is a season of life to be busy and have fun
Yeah.
and travel and like go all in with ministry and different
Yeah.
things like that. But I'm like, there will come a season where I won't be able to give what I'm giving now because
Right.
I'll be married or I'll have a family
Yeah.
or like whatever that may be, And so the Lord's so understanding of that. And then it's so cool how he just like shifts our desires and availability and
Yeah.
passions like for those seasons too, for sure.
That's incredible. Okay. So with all that being said, oh, you know what? I wrote down, I saw you at On River Time.
At the event?
Yeah. So I think they called you out or they said
Oh
you were
yeah,
there.
they
And I
were,
was like,
yeah.
oh my gosh. And then I remember seeing you like walk
I
by and I
didn't
was
see
planning on coming
you.
to see you after the speak. But then I got a call from my mom who was
Oh,
watching
yeah.
baby. And so I had to leave a little bit early.
Okay.
But I just think that's so neat because that's what I've enjoyed, like kind of being on the sidelines watching with you, is
Uh-huh.
all the things that you're involved with
Uh-huh.
and just how much you love like giving back and being a part of
Yes,
things that
I
have a
do.
purpose. And
I do. It is so fun, and obviously, I think there's a different level of buy-in when you've been, like literally your life's been changed by organizations like that, but I really do love to just help people and,
yeah.
like, guide them and walk with them and just, like, be a friend to
Yeah.
anyone that needs one, so
That's awesome. Well, okay, so I remember we'll kind of touch on this. This kind of goes with the fundraising and stuff. You mentioned trying to set up a filming, or that's one of your next
yes.
step, like a filming room or
Yeah.
recording room. Tell me a little
Mhm.
bit about that.
Yes. So right now, one of the things that we're starting to lean in with Feel the Smile is
Mhm.
creating more content, like specifically for online. A lot of what we do, a lot of what I do is front facing and in person, especially now that we have social and Bible study.
Yeah.
But we have literally thousands of girls that love Feel the Smile and are impacted by it and would love to come to a social if they just lived in Birmingham, Auburn, or Tuscaloosa.
Yeah.
And obviously, like long-term vision is to do social in other places. But
Yeah.
until then, and really forever, even when we do go to other places, like we have the opportunity to create encouragement and practical resources for girls online. So with that came just like us having the desire to like go dive into like filming content, whether that's messages, just encouragement videos. We do a lot of videos like on Instagram and different things like that. So we're setting up like a film room right now,
That
which
is
I'm
so
really excited
cool.
about. I know.
That is
I'm like, I'm
awesome.
so grateful for God's provision and funding for
Yeah.
us to even be able to do that. So,
Mhm.
we're working on that right now. We're waiting for all of our packages to come in so we can get
Yay.
it all set
And you'll
up.
have your little home, like your
Yes,
kind of like touch point or touch base point,
I know. Yeah, yeah.
It's nice to have a
So
place like that. You can just sit down and film everything. It's
it
all
really
set up. Yeah.
is. I know. So I'm really excited about that. And Feel the Smile has a podcast and we share a lot of our like Bible studies and social messages on there too. But I'm such a big believer in helping girls like practically know how to walk with God.
Yeah.
So we're getting ready to do a lot of like 3 ways to X, Y, and Z, or 3 ways to read your Bible, how to invite God into your everyday, just like simple videos that practically help people walk with Jesus in their everyday, that we're just really excited about to be able to do in this
That's
little
awesome.
room.
So how do people get involved in even the fundraising part? Like, so when you'll have these events to fundraise for, goals that you're having, like the film room.
Yeah.
So how does if someone wants to maybe be a sponsor or
Yeah.
a donor, if they want to attend, how do they how do they learn about becoming a part of something like
Yeah,
that?
for sure. So, we have Instagram as like our main outlet of being able to know what's going on. I will say like our channel for like girls that are our audience and our channel for like supporters are a little different. So our main communication thread for supporters is email, and then we're about to mail out like an impact report. And people that would be interested in being involved are more than welcome to reach out to me on Instagram. My email is like on our Instagram or online. If you look up feelthesmile.org, we actually have like a donate page where people can donate online directly through our website. Or if they're interested in being a part in larger ways, we have like a connect form where they can fill out, and that just goes directly to my email. We have an annual fundraiser every October called Smile Soiree that we host. So we just had that in October. But then also a lot of people are interested in giving through like other giving platforms. So like the National Christian Foundation and different things like that, or other foundations. And we're registered like with the National Christian Foundation too. So for anyone that prefers to give that way, you can find us on there.
Now the soiree that you do, is that in person or virtual?
In person.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So we actually do, I guess part of it's online. We do a silent auction and a lunch. So all silent auction items, the silent auction is online and people bid online, and then the lunch is in person.
Oh my gosh. That is awesome.
I know. This is our first year doing the silent auction online. So that was so crazy, but it was really great and went really well.
How neat. And then if you decide to do it again, then you have your lessons that you've learned or new techniques of doing things.
And we will definitely do it again. It was like a game changer. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, with all that being said, I always try to ask our guests, what is one piece of advice or lesson that you've learned that you would want to give to our listeners that you feel like really changed the game for you and what you're doing now and the purpose that you've stepped into? What's just a life lesson that you could share?
Let me think for a second.
I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot.
I know. I'm like, I just don't even know how you would only pick one, because.
Or something that you've realized that has helped you like step out in obedience to really achieving what you're doing now.
I always it reminds me of my, our executive director at the ranch. He was sharing with us, we have like monthly staff meetings, and one month he shared, he was talking about how an organization cannot be what its people are not. And I think that's something that has really stuck with me in terms of leading, is I can only be on the outside as much as what I'm allowing God to do on the inside. And I think that really points back to who we're allowing God to be to us, like in the secret place with him, and just spending time with him and learning with him and growing with him and allowing the Lord to really take root as a true relationship in our life and in our heart. And a lot of what I do and a lot of what everyone does is pouring out all the time, whether you are pouring out in ministry and it's spiritually and emotionally, or you're pouring out at work and it's physically. Like, we have to be so careful to allow our hearts and our minds and our souls to just be filled up with Jesus in the private, secret place, for that to take any sort of ripple effect in the public place. And I think that's something that the Lord's taught me a lot about over the last few years in terms of just leading people or sharing encouragement or just like being able to know his voice. Like, we have to know the Holy Spirit's voice to even be able to walk in the direction that he's called us to
know
to
what's from
experience
him
his favor in what we're doing. And all of that traces back to spending time with him. Jesus is the most important relationship we will ever take part in our whole entire lives. It's what makes us a good friend. It's what makes us a good spouse, a good mom, wife, husband, whatever that may be, it all starts with him. And so I think each and every day I learn more and more the importance of that, not just knowing God and believing God, but truly doing life with Jesus,
Yeah.
whether that's him being the first person that you talk to when you wake up in the morning and the last thing that you think about before you go to bed. Just keeping him like at the center of everything, I think would be like my biggest piece of advice. Because I think navigating all things, big seasons, small seasons, transitions, relationships, all of that points back
Yeah.
to just a relationship, an intimate relationship with Jesus.
Yeah, I think the Bible says the sheep know my voice, the voice of his
Yes.
shepherd. And it's like you've got to spend time with
To
someone
know that
to know that
voice.
voice. And that
Yeah,
helps you make decisions in
it
life and be
does.
obedient and make sure you're not being directed by the world or
Yeah.
by self
Yeah.
versus being directed by God.
1,000%.
And it even goes back to you saying, you know, like kind of what the man was talking about that you mentioned. It's like not only for yourself being who you are in the quiet place, like you have to have that in order to, you know, shine that out to those that you encounter and in what you do in your life and stuff. But it's also the importance of if you have this idea, if God's put something on your heart and you need a team and you want to
Yeah.
build a team and God's calling you to build a team, to build that team with like-minded people.
Yeah,
You know, iron sharpen iron. Like, you
it
don't want to have
does.
someone in there that doesn't share that same
For
passion
sure.
and desire and, you know, recognize the importance of spending your daily, like just your whole day being spent with Jesus,
Yeah,
you know.
that's so true. It's so good.
Well, thank you so much for coming
Thanks for
on.
having me.
I think that is just such, your story is incredible. What you're doing is
Thanks.
incredible. Before we wrap up though,
Yeah.
remind us one more time where all the listeners can go to find more information, to maybe join the socials, you know.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. So you can find all information on our website, feelthesmile.org. And all the tabs are listed on there: social, how to get connected, how to support, all of those things.
Okay.
And then you can also find us on Instagram, and our Instagram is feelthesmile.org. And that's where you can really stay in the know of how to get connected through email, text, but also all details for social and Bible study in any way for you as a young adult girl to like get connected truly.
Yeah, and
So
who knows, maybe there's someone out there from a different college or different city
yes,
that maybe wants to start up a
Yes.
location, and they can reach
Yes.
out to you
For
through there.
sure. For sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you for
Thanks
coming
for having
on.
me. It was so
Oh,
fun.
I'm so glad you enjoyed it. And we
Yes.
thank y'all for listening.
Mhm.
Tune in. We have some more great guests coming on the show, and we're just so grateful to have y'all a part of it.